What happens when the city's undisputed master of the shadows fixates on you? For Laura, a fierce spirit from across the world, one brazen act of defiance against Baek Hyan Wu, the glacial-eyed Korean Mafia lord, was all it took to seal her fate. She was supposed to be a casualty of his fury, but instead, she became the singular obsession he was incapable of releasing. Laura never anticipated her quiet, industrious life in the heart of Seoul would intersect with Baek Hyan Wu, the ruthless syndicate chief who governed the metropolis from the deepest darkness. To align with him meant inviting utter ruin. To cross him meant a guaranteed, chilling end. But what occurs when raw animosity is ignited by a devastating attraction, and your survival hinges on a dangerous heart that refuses to yield? The evening pulsed with the muffled rhythm of Seoul's bustling streets. Traffic lights washed the pavement in overlapping streaks of crimson and emerald. Tucked away between two towering monuments of glass, Laura's kitchen offered a haven. A cozy restaurant warm with the rich, earthy scent of jollof rice, seasoned suya skewers, and spices that were completely foreign to the Korean palate. Laura straightened her apron, using a towel to wipe moisture from her palms as she plated a sizzling portion of fried plantain, and tapped the small silver bell for service. Her rich, dark hair was neatly secured, but playful tendrils escaped to frame her smooth brown skin. She wasn't merely the proprietor. She was the chef, the accountant, and often the janitor. Yet, despite the exhausting demands, this little piece of West Africa was her most treasured achievement. "Table 7 needs another bottle of water," her young assistant Minji whispered, her eyes darting nervously toward a shadowed corner booth. Laura followed Minji's gaze. That was the moment the energy in the room violently compressed. A phalanx of men in tailored black suits entered, and their presence instantly suctioned the ambient noise and chatter from the room. Diners hushed their conversations, chopsticks freezing midair. The man at the vanguard didn't just move, he commanded movement. Broad-shouldered, with a chiseled jaw, his sleek black hair was styled with lethal precision. His suit looked less like clothing and more like a second formidable skin. Laura had lived long enough in Seoul to instantly recognize him, even without a direct introduction. Baek Hyan Wu, the kingmaker of the underworld. A name that echoed with the threat of a thunderclap in hushed backrooms, and a face occasionally glimpsed in grainy news clips detailing tragedies the city preferred not to mention. Rumors painted him as being utterly devoid of mercy, a man who never displayed emotion, capable of making entire bloodlines vanish for the slightest transgression. Her stomach clenched painfully, but her posture remained rigidly upright. This establishment was hers. Hyan Wu and his guards slid into the most spacious booth. His security team scanned the perimeter with frigid intensity, daring any patron to hold their stare for too long. Laura forced her feet to move, a menu gripped in her hand. "Good evening. Welcome to Laura's kitchen." Her voice was remarkably steady, though the drumbeat of her heart was faster than the kitchen's frantic rhythm. Hyan Wu's obsidian gaze lifted slowly to meet hers. His eyes were chilling, yet strangely compelling, like dark, polished metal that could slice through any pretense. He offered no reply. Instead, he made a subtle flick of his hand, a silent imperious dismissal that indicated she should continue her work. Laura gently placed the menus on the table. "We have. I will consume whatever dish you believe justifies my time." Hyan Wu interrupted, his voice a low, silken rumble that nonetheless carried the unmistakable weight of a non-negotiable decree. Laura's jaw tensed. He was not making a request, he was issuing an ultimatum. Nevertheless, she gave a slow, controlled nod, perfectly concealing the flicker of her rising ire. "Very well. I will prepare the house specialty." Back in the kitchen, her hands worked with professional speed, but her mind spun. Why here? Why tonight? Customers were whispering anxiously. A few looked ready to bolt, but none risked rising to their feet and drawing the terrifying attention of the men in black. When she returned, bearing steaming plates of jollof rice, seasoned chicken and fried plantain, Hyan Wu offered no word of gratitude. He simply stared at the plate for a long, quiet moment, then began to eat, his movements measured and deliberate, as if carefully testing the quality of her challenge. The silence of the entire restaurant was focused on his solitary act. After only 2 bites, he leaned back, picked up his linen napkin, and dabbed his lips. His face remained utterly unreadable, Then, with a slow, dismissive sweep of his wrist, he sent the plate hurtling off the tabletop. It exploded on the immaculate tiled floor, the porcelain shattering, the bright orange sauce splattering across the pristine white surface. Gasps rippled through the room. Laura froze. Hyan Wu's voice dripped into the silence like a caustic acid. Consider it a rare privilege that I even allowed your food to pass my lips. Minji's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Every other customer lowered their head. No one dared to exhale too loudly. This was the expected protocol. You kept your mouth shut, absorbed the slight, and thanked whatever deity you prayed to that you were spared physical violence. But Laura was not sculpted from submission. Her hands curled into tight fists as a wave of heat ignited her face. Slowly, meticulously, she stepped forward, her shoes crunching over the fragments of shattered plate. She stopped directly at the edge of his table, her chin tilted high. You will pay for that meal, she stated, her voice resonating with unyielding firmness. Hyan Wu's head tilted slightly, his obsidian eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. What did you just say to me? You heard me, Laura replied, her voice now like tempered steel. You dine here, you compensate. You do not have the right to demolish my property and exit as if you own the place. The restaurant descended into a complete, paralyzed silence. Even the air seemed to halt its movement. One of Hyan Wu's subordinates leaped to his feet, fury contorting his features. Control your tongue, woman. Be seated. Sit down. Hyan Wu's command was quiet, but it lashed out like a whip, forcing the man back into his chair instantly. Now Hyan Wu rose, his massive frame towering over Laura. His presence was overwhelming, a localized storm of pure, concentrated power. He leaned in until she could clearly see a faint, white scar cutting diagonally across his defined jawline. You possess fire, he murmured, his breath warm near her ear. But fire is extinguished when it meets steel. Laura's heart hammered against her ribs, yet she stood her ground, refusing to show a trace of fear. Her voice was the counterstrike. And steel corrodes when it meets the current of water. Do not test me, Baek Hyan Wu. The use of his full name elicited another collective, terrified intake of breath from the room. No one, absolutely no one, ever used his name. For the first time, a flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face. His lips curved slightly, a minute expression that was somewhere between cold amusement and utter disbelief. You dare to challenge me, he whispered. Ido. Her dark eyes were unwavering. She reached for the bill folder on the counter, scrawled a total, and slapped it down onto the table between them. That will be 25,000 Korean won. Cash or card? The profound tension shattered into shocked silence. Hyan Wu's men stiffened, waiting for the inevitable, brutal reaction. Was she insane? Did she have a death wish? Hyan Wu simply studied her for a protracted, silent moment. His expression revealed nothing, but his eyes burned with something entirely new. Not merely rage, not just haughty arrogance, but something deeper, more intense. He did not reach for his wallet. Instead, he took one slow step closer. Close enough that she registered the faint scent of leather and expensive musk from his cologne. He lowered his voice, which was now soft and lethally dangerous. You will regret this action. Then, without another word or glance, he spun on his heel and strode out, his men trailing him like perfectly synchronized shadows. The tiny bell above the door gave a light, almost absurd jingle as it closed behind them, leaving a profound, suffocating silence. The instant they vanished, the restaurant exploded in a torrent of frightened murmurs. Is she crazy? She actually spoke to Baek Hyan Wu like that. She's finished. She will die. He will certainly return. Minji rushed to Laura's side, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Laura, what have you done? Laura knelt and began meticulously gathering the shards of the broken plate, her face calm, though her internal storm raged. What was necessary, she said simply. But as she dropped the final fragments into the waste bin, she felt a profound certainty deep in her core. This night had irrevocably changed everything. She had issued a challenge to a king within his own domain. And kings never, ever forgive or forget a defiance. The morning following the confrontation, Laura's kitchen was disturbingly quiet. The usual lively banter from loyal customers was thin. as if an invisible curtain of fear had fallen over the city overnight. Laura arranged trays of fresh bofrot on the counter, but no one lined up to buy them. Minji fussed uselessly at the register, nervously glancing at the doorway every few seconds. "Do you truly believe he will return?" she finally asked, her voice barely a tremor. Laura paused, wiping her hands on a cloth. She hadn't slept much. Hyan Wu's cold eyes and low, dangerous voice echoed relentlessly. "You will regret this." She adjusted her shoulders, forcing herself to stand tall. "If he does, then he will find me right where I stand." Minji stared at her as if she were deeply delusional. "Laura, people vanish after crossing him. Do you want to be erased?" Laura manufactured a faint smile. "I did not come all this way to Seoul just to vanish." But in the deepest part of her mind, a cold doubt began to solidify. She had seen enough of this city to know that influence like Hyan Wu's was not an empty display. He possessed the terrifying reach to upend a person's life without ever raising a finger. And before the week was over, she would learn the precise meaning of that power. It began with the supply chain. Her weekly vendor for rice and chicken, the only Korean grocer who stocked the specialty brands she needed, called her, stammering apologies. "I am deeply sorry, Laura SSI, but we cannot fulfill your deliveries anymore." "Why not?" she demanded, pressing the phone harder to her ear. There was a long silence, followed by a defeated sigh. "Orders, from much higher up. Do not attempt to call us again." The line went dead. By the afternoon, 2 more essential suppliers had terminated their contracts. By nightfall, even the company providing her takeout containers and disposable cups had canceled their agreement. Laura stood alone in the center of her kitchen that night, her knuckles white as she gripped the counter. The shelves that had been fully stocked yesterday already appeared cavernously bare. It required no genius to pinpoint the architect of this misery. Baek Hyan Wu. The man had no need to return and shout or smash more plates. His coordinated silence was far more dangerous, his terrifying reach more pervasive. When she finally locked up for the night, she saw a sleek black sedan idling across the street. Its tinted windows perfectly concealed the occupants, but she felt their collective gaze on her as she secured the lock. Her skin crawled with dread, yet she kept her chin elevated and walked toward her apartment without ever increasing her pace. Days bled into one another, and business drastically thinned. The regulars stopped visiting, murmuring weak excuses about sudden busyness. But Laura understood the cold truth. No one wanted to risk the wrath of Baek Hyan Wu. Still, she adamantly refused to close her doors. Each morning, she cooked using whatever dwindling ingredients she had left. Each evening, she meticulously cleaned the tables, even if only 2 or 3 timid customers had sat there. But without fail, every single night, the same ominous black car appeared across the street, waiting. One evening, after the last lock clicked, Laura turned and found herself face to face with a man in an immaculate black suit. She stumbled backward, her heart leaping into her throat. "Who are you?" The man executed a slight, formal bow. "A messenger. Mum. My employer formally requests your immediate presence." Her hands clenched tightly around her bag strap. "And if I decline the request?" The man's expression remained utterly neutral. "Then we will simply wait. But my employer is not fond of being kept waiting." Laura drew a deep, heavy breath, her chest tight with burgeoning terror. Yet she refused to be escorted like a prisoner. "Tell your boss," she said with resolute firmness, "that if he desires an audience with me, he can present himself here." A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, crossed the man's eyes, but he bowed once more and retreated to the black car. Laura stood rigid, the night wind chilling her face. Her limbs felt heavy as lead, but her spirit burned with an even fiercer intensity. The campaign of retribution escalated. One afternoon, she arrived at the restaurant to find the windows completely shattered. Fragments of glass glittered across the floor, the tables violently overturned. Someone had spray-painted crude, vibrant red symbols across her freshly painted walls. Symbols she did not recognize but instinctively knew belonged to the dark world of Hyan Wu. Minji burst into tears upon seeing the wreckage. "We must surrender, Laura. Please. This is not worth sacrificing our lives." Laura stood amidst the destruction, her hands trembling at her sides. For a terrifying moment, despair clawed at her throat. But then she remembered the profound reason she had come to Seoul. Why she had fought so fiercely to establish this place. Her late mother's words echoed in her mind, "Stand tall, Laura. The world only kneels before those who absolutely refuse to be broken." With deliberate, steady hands she retrieved the broom. "We clean up. We open for business tomorrow. As usual." Minji stared at her with an expression that bordered on pity. Perhaps Laura was mad. But giving up now would mean that Hyan Wu had ultimately triumphed. And Laura had not traveled halfway across the globe to surrender. That night, as she vigorously scrubbed the final traces of red paint from the walls, the door opened without a sound. The soft scrape of polished dress shoes against the floorboards made her freeze instantly. Slowly, she turned around. He was there. Hyan Wu. No bodyguards this time. No entourage of suited men. Just him, standing in the doorway as if he were the owner of the very air she breathed. He stepped inside, the streetlights casting his silhouette long and dark across the floor. His immaculate black suit was perfect, his presence overwhelming. Laura straightened up, gripping the cleaning rag in her hand like a makeshift weapon. "Have you come to check if I've finally shut down?" Hyan Wu's lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smirk. "Not yet. I am impressed." His gaze swept across the half-cleaned walls, and the pile of broken glass still heaped in the corner. Then his eyes locked back onto hers, sharp and demanding. "You could have made this so simple," he said softly. "All you had to do was lower your head." But instead he gestured vaguely at the ruin. "You choose to fight." Laura's chest rose and fell in controlled, measured breaths. "Because this space is mine, and I will not allow anyone to take it from me. Not even you." Hyan Wu moved closer. The air seemed to coalesce around him, thick with unspoken, dangerous energy. His eyes were locked on hers, unreadable yet strangely seeking. "You do not fear me," he murmured. Laura swallowed hard, her mouth dry. Fear was definitely coiled tight inside her, but she absolutely refused to let it surface. "Perhaps I do," she admitted, "but I will not permit it to dictate my actions." For an eternity, silence stretched between them. Only the distant, low hum of the city filled the space. Then, completely unexpectedly, Hyan Wu released a low, dark chuckle that sent a shiver down her spine. "You are either extraordinarily brave," he said, "or exceptionally foolish." He leaned in slightly, close enough that she caught the expensive blend of cedar and smoke that was his cologne. His voice dropped to a perilous whisper. "And I cannot yet decide which quality I find more compelling." With that, he turned on his heel and departed, the door closing gently behind him. Laura stood frozen in place, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had fully braced herself for fury, for violence, for total destruction. But what she had witnessed in his eyes was far more unsettling. In that brief, charged instant, she was no longer certain if Hyan Wu intended to destroy her, or if he had simply discovered his newest, most dangerous obsession. The morning after Hyan Wu's unexpected appearance, Laura woke with the image of his subtle smirk burned into her memory. She lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, her heart deeply unsettled. His voice echoed in her mind, low, challenging, yet undeniably intrigued. "You're either brave or very foolish, and I can't decide which I like more." Laura shook her head, forcing the memory away. She absolutely could not afford to dwell on him. Not in that way. He was pure hazard cloaked in sharp elegance, a wolf who offered a false smile while displaying his teeth. She had survived this long in Seoul by maintaining a low profile and working tirelessly, not by engaging in a delicate dance with devils. Still, she couldn't shake the gnawing unease. Something had shifted in him last night. She had seen it, a spark that had nothing to do with rage, and everything to do with personalized interest. And Hyan Wu's interest was the very last thing she needed in her life. At the restaurant, Laura struggled to maintain her focus. On cooking, on cleaning, on merely staying afloat. But she noticed the change immediately. A steady increase of new faces appeared among her few customers. Men and women who did not fit the profile of her ordinary, humble patrons. Their eyes lingered too long. Their questions about her African dishes were too overly rehearsed. They paid in large wads of cash, tipped generously, and then departed without having eaten more than a single bite. Spies. Watching her every move, reporting back to him. Minji noticed too. Laura, she whispered, her hands trembling as she brought plates back to the kitchen. Those men, they terrify me. Laura offered a tight, false smile. They'll eventually grow bored. But she didn't believe the words as they left her mouth. That evening, as she walked home, Laura became certain she was being followed. The muted rhythm of footsteps synchronized with hers along the narrow pedestrian alley between the apartment complexes. She stopped dead. The footsteps stopped. Her heart rate accelerated. Spinning around, she saw him. Baek Hyan Wu. He wasn't wearing a suit this time. He was dressed in a simple, dark coat, his hair falling casually over his forehead, but his presence was no less overwhelming. He leaned against the brick wall, as if he had been patiently waiting for her all along. Laura's voice came out sharper than she intended. Are you stalking me now? His lips curved faintly. Stalking is an unpleasantly ugly term. I prefer dedicated observation. Observation? She repeated, incredulous. He pushed off the wall, his movement liquid and predatory. You hold my interest. Laura stiffened instantly. I didn't request your interest. That is the unfortunate trouble with fire, Hyan Wu murmured, moving closer. It doesn't ask to be noticed. It simply burns, and everyone in its vicinity has no choice but to feel its heat. Her breath hitched in her throat, but she forced herself not to retreat. If you've come to terrorize me again, it will not succeed. Terrorize. His voice was smooth as velvet, but the steel was still audible beneath it. No, Laura. If I wished to terrorize you, you would not be standing here now. Her heart hammered, but she refused to break eye contact. Then what exactly do you want? His gaze swept slowly and deliberately over her face, as if seeking something concealed beneath her skin. Finally, he said softly, I have not yet decided. The answer was more chilling than any overt threat he could have made. Over the course of the next week, his presence became an undeniable, constant factor. Everywhere Laura went, she felt him, or his proxies. At the local market, she'd spot a man in a dark coat watching her from across the stalls. On the subway, she'd feel an intense, burning stare until she turned, only to catch the vanishing glimpse of someone melting into the crowd. And sometimes, when she looked up from her kitchen window late at night, she could swear she saw him across the street, standing beneath the yellow glow of the street lamp, smoke curling from a cigarette in his hand. He never came inside. He never spoke. He simply watched, and strangely, that became worse than any confrontation. Her customer base dwindled further. The word had spread with devastating speed. Laura's kitchen was now unsafe territory. Some whispered she was already under the protection of the Mafia. Others claimed she had mortally offended them. Either way, ordinary citizens avoided her like a plague, but the empty tables didn't break her spirit as much as the gnawing loneliness did. One night, after finally locking up, she sat down at a table and buried her face in her hands. Her chest ached with exhaustion, frustration, and the deep fear she refused to acknowledge. Crying truly does not suit you. Her head snapped up immediately. Hyan Wu stood by the doorway, his tall frame framed by the dim light of the street. He had entered silently, as if the shadows themselves had allowed him passage. Laura shot to her feet, quickly wiping her eyes. You. Again. Me. Again, he echoed smoothly, stepping closer. Why the look of surprise? Because normal people use the door and knock. His smirk deepened. Do I resemble a normal person to you? She exhaled sharply, crossing her arms. Why are you actually here? He studied her for a long moment, then stated simply, because I desired to be. The sheer audacity of his answer made her laugh, a short, bitter sound. You decimated my business. You terrified my staff. And now you show up because you desired it. His expression did not change, but his eyes, they flickered briefly with something unguarded. I told you, Laura, you fascinate me. No one speaks to me the way you do. Perhaps that is because everyone else possesses the common sense required to remain alive, she snapped back. For a tense moment, silence hung between them. Then unexpectedly, Hyan Wu chuckled. It wasn't mocking or cruel this time. It was low, authentic, and strikingly warm. Laura blinked. She had never heard him laugh before. The sound unsettled her more than any threat. "Do you realize how many years it has been," he said softly, almost to himself, "since anyone dared to speak to me with such raw truth?" She clenched her jaw, refusing to be swayed by this vulnerability. "Perhaps you simply need more people telling you the truth." Hyan Wu's gaze locked onto hers, intense, unreadable. Then he moved closer, so close she could feel the faint warmth radiating off him. "You are a scorching fire, Laura." "And I," his lips curved into a dangerous smile, "I have been bitterly cold for far too long." Her breath hitched. For the first time since their initial encounter, she felt a profound shift within her. Not fear, not anger, but something far more perilous. A terrifying pull. That night, long after he had left, Laura sat alone in the restaurant past midnight. Her thoughts were a relentless storm. She should despise him. She should want nothing to do with him. He was chaos, imminent danger, and ruin wrapped in human form. And yet, her fingers trembled as she recalled the way his eyes had softened for a fleeting second. The sound of his laughter, like a man rediscovering a feeling he'd forgotten was possible, terrified her more than his threats. Because she realized with a sickening lurch that Hyan Wu was no longer just testing her will. He was pulling her relentlessly into his dark world, thread by slow thread. And she was no longer certain how much longer she could resist the strange magnetic force. The restaurant felt emptier, heavier, with each passing day. Laura still unlocked the doors every morning, but the atmosphere inside was hollow. Tables remained untouched. Chairs sat stacked neatly, the smell of spices fading quicker than before. Even the sound of her own cooking couldn't fill the crushing silence anymore. Minji had completely stopped coming. One evening after closing, Laura found a simple, folded note slipped beneath the door. "I'm sorry, Laura. I simply cannot continue this. Please stay safe." Laura held the note tightly, her throat aching with sorrow. One by one, everyone was abandoning her. Not out of malice, but out of sheer, bone-deep terror. And who could blame them? When Hyan Wu fixated his eyes on you, your world inevitably fractured. But she refused to fracture. Or at least, she clung to that resolution until the night everything changed forever. It was late when she finally locked up, well past midnight. The streets were almost deserted, neon signs flickering faintly in the distance. She secured the restaurant door and turned, only to instantly freeze. Two sleek black cars were parked at the curb. Her stomach plummeted. From the first car, 3 men in identical suits emerged. Silent, physically imposing, they were the absolute shadows of Hyan Wu's empire. One of them executed a slight bow. "Laura SSI, our boss formally requests your immediate company." Laura's grip tightened on her shoulder bag. "And if I decline?" The man straightened, his face utterly devoid of expression. "Then we will take you regardless." Her breath caught, but she forced her chin high. "Tell your boss that if he wants me, he can come here and get me himself." The man did not flinch. He simply opened the car door, his voice calm and regretful. "Please do not make this process harder than it needs to be." For a heart-stopping second, Laura contemplated running. But where would she go? Who could she possibly call? She was utterly alone in this vast city, and Hyan Wu had already proven his reach was absolute. So she exhaled slowly, squared her shoulders with a final, defiant effort, and stepped into the car. The drive was conducted in complete silence. The city lights streaking past the tinted windows in fleeting flashes of gold and blue. Laura kept her hands folded tightly in her lap, determined not to betray her trembling fingers. Finally, the cars came to a stop in front of a tall, secluded building near the edge of the Han River. It was not a flashy skyscraper, but a genuine fortress. The men led her inside. Polished marble floors gleamed beneath dim, indirect lighting. The air was subtly scented with old leather and wood smoke. Everything about the place whispered of immense, undeniable wealth, terrifying power, and immediate danger. And then she saw him. Hyan Wu sat at the head of a long, dark table in a private lounge, his suit perfect as always, a glass of amber whiskey resting in his hand. He looked up as she was brought in, and a slow, possessive smile curved his lips. "You came," he stated. Laura glared at him, refusing to sit. "I was hardly presented with a meaningful choice." "Choice?" Hyan Wu repeated, swirling the liquid in his glass. Everything in life is a choice, Laura. You chose to enter my vehicle. You chose not to scream. You chose to face me now. And you chose to terrorize my existence, she snapped back. His smile widened slightly. Did I? Yes, she hissed. You crippled my suppliers, scared off my patrons, and vandalized my restaurant. All because I told you to compensate for your meal. For a moment his expression hardened, his obsidian eyes narrowing in a fleeting display of pure menace. Then, just as swiftly, he leaned back in his chair, a familiar amusement flickering across his face. Do you know, he said softly, that no single human being has spoken to me with such reckless abandon in a decade? Laura's chest tightened. Perhaps because they all understood the consequences. Or perhaps, Hyan Wu murmured, setting his glass down with a decisive click, because they lack the magnificent fire that you possess. He stood, his towering figure moving closer, every step utterly deliberate. The air grew perceptibly heavier with the closing distance. He stopped directly in front of her. You truly fascinate me, Laura, he said, his voice slow and resonant. Dangerously so. Do you comprehend what happens to the individuals who manage to fascinate me? She swallowed hard, refusing to take a single step backward. They disappear. His lips curved. Sometimes. And sometimes, he leaned in, his voice a mesmerizing rasp. They burn so incredibly bright that I become entirely incapable of looking away. Her heart raced, every primal instinct screaming at her to flee. Yet her feet remained firmly planted, her body trembling with a confusing collision of fear and stubborn defiance. What exactly do you want from me, Hyan Wu? She demanded. For a long, tense moment, he offered no reply. His gaze was locked onto hers, intense, relentless, deeply searching. Then he lowered his head slightly, his words a whisper meant only for her ears. Everything. Laura's breath hitched, her chest seizing. You cannot have me. He smirked. Cannot or will not. Both. The word slipped from her lips like a honed weapon. And for the first time, Hyan Wu's smirk faltered. His expression darkened, his jaw tightening, but not with rage. With something else, something far heavier, more consuming, obsession. He did not force her that night. He didn't lay a hand on her, nor did he issue a single direct threat. Instead, he let her leave. His men drove her back, the city still cloaked in silence, her heart pounding uncontrollably the entire journey. But when Laura finally lay in her bed hours later, staring sleeplessly at the ceiling, she grasped the painful truth. He hadn't released her. He had simply pulled her in deeper. Because from that moment on, she wasn't just fighting for her beloved restaurant anymore. She was fighting for her soul, for her essential freedom, for the fragile boundary separating her world from his. And deep down, she feared it was already too late. The following day, when she unlocked Laura's kitchen, a stunning bouquet of white lilies sat waiting on the counter. Pristine, elegant, and entirely without a note or a signature. But she didn't require one. She knew exactly who the sender was. And as she stared at the flowers, her stomach twisted with a sickening combination of dread and something far more insidious. Because for the first time since their dangerous dance began, Laura wasn't entirely sure if she still hated Baek Hyan Wu, or if she was terrified of how much a hidden part of her secretly yearned to know what it truly meant to be wanted by a man like him. The inaugural snow of winter drifted softly over Seoul. The streets glistened with a fine layer of frost, neon signs reflecting against the icy sidewalks. Laura's kitchen had reopened weeks ago, brighter and more welcoming than ever, boasting new tables, fresh paint, and customers who were finally daring to return. But even now, as she served steaming bowls of egusi soup to a group of curious Korean college students, Laura could still feel the weight of eyes upon her. Not merely the curious stares of patrons, but the invisible, constant presence of him. Baek Hyan Wu. Since that fateful night at his fortress, he had never truly been absent. Sometimes she would spot a sleek black luxury sedan idling across the street. Sometimes a stranger would enter, order a glass of water, and depart minutes later. She knew this was his method, watching her without directly intruding. And though she repeatedly told herself she despised it, despised him, her pulse always quickened whenever she sensed his proximity. It was almost midnight when she finally closed the restaurant for the night. The streets were quiet, snowflakes drifting lazily through the darkness. She wrapped her heavy scarf tighter around her neck and turned to lock the door, only to freeze in place. He was there. Baek Hyan Wu stood across the street, completely alone, with no bodyguards this time. His black overcoat was lightly dusted with snow, his sharp jawline pale beneath the winter light. Their eyes met, and Laura's heart hammered against her ribs, her breath misting visibly in the sharp cold. "What do you want, Hyan Wu?" she called out, her voice steady despite the internal storm. He did not immediately answer. Instead, he crossed the street slowly, each step deliberate, crunching softly in the fresh snow. When he stopped in front of her, he was close enough that she could see the faint tremble in his hand as he pulled something small from his coat pocket. Not a weapon, but a velvet-covered box. Laura's lips parted in shock. "You cannot be serious," she whispered. "I am." Hyan Wu cut in, his voice low but completely unshakable. "I have destroyed entire rival kingdoms for far less than what you have done to me. You humiliated me, you defied me, you cursed my name to my face, and yet," his voice cracked almost imperceptibly, "I have never wanted anything more in my life than to be yours." Laura's breath hitched. The Mafia king of Seoul, the man most feared in all of Korea, stood before her in the falling snow kneeling. Yes, kneeling. The velvet box opened, revealing a simple silver band. No blinding diamonds, no extravagant jewels, just a ring, plain, unadorned, but utterly real. "I can offer you boundless riches," he whispered, his eyes locked on hers. "I can grant you limitless power. I can erase every single man who has ever looked at you with disrespect. But none of that means anything if I cannot have your heart. So I beg you, Laura, do not be my possession. Be my equal. Be my queen." The entire world seemed to halt its rotation. The sounds of the city faded away. The snowflakes appeared suspended in the air. And all Laura could hear was the frantic pounding of her own heart. "Hyan Wu," her voice trembled. "Do you even comprehend what you're asking? I am not like you. I do not belong in your world of guns and impenetrable shadows. You belong exactly wherever you choose to be," he said fiercely, rising to his feet, his eyes burning with a desperate intensity. "And if that means I must dismantle my world piece by piece to construct yours, I will do it." Tears stung her eyes. She had fought him, mocked him, resisted him at every solitary turn. And yet here he was, choosing her, humbling himself for her, a man who had never once bowed to anyone. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "And if I say no?" Hyan Wu's jaw tightened, his expression heartbroken but resolute. "Then I will dedicate the rest of my life to proving to you that I am worthy until the moment you finally say yes." The profound sincerity in his words finally broke her reserve. Slowly, Laura stepped forward. Her fingers reached out, gently brushing against his cold cheek. He closed his eyes at her touch, like a man who had been starved of warmth for far too long. "Baek Hyan Wu," she whispered. "You terrify me. You infuriate me. But you also," she swallowed hard, her tears finally beginning to fall. "You make me feel intensely alive in a way I never believed was possible." His eyes snapped open, searching hers desperately. "Does that mean?" "Yes," she breathed. "But on one condition." "Anything," he replied instantly. "You learn to love me as your equal," she whispered. "Not as your possession, not as your prize. As Laura, the woman who will stand directly beside you, not meekly beneath you." For a final moment, silence hung between them. Then slowly Hyan Wu smiled. Not the cold, mocking smirk she had grown to know, but a true, genuine smile, soft, raw, and full of astonishing promise. "As you wish, Laura." He slipped the ring onto her finger. The simple silver band gleamed under the soft, falling snow. And when he finally pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a desperate passion that burned hotter than any fire, Laura knew the profound truth. The Mafia king had bowed, not merely to her love, but to the indomitable strength of her spirit.